We'll begin by talking about the homicide case. So this case began back on March 6th, so 4 years ago, 2015, 4 years ago tomorrow. Deputies were called to 530 Nattingham Close, which is an address in Palm Harbor. And we were called because it had been reported to us that 85-year-old Anthony Tomaselli, Tomaselli, had passed away, and reported by his daughters, Linda Roberts, who is now 62 years old, and Mary Beth Tomaselli, who is 63 years old. And they reported that their father had been ill. He had cancer, he had dementia. And the story they told when deputies responded back in 2015 was that they had taken their dad for a ride to the beach on the previous evening, which would have been March 4th. And that on March 5th, they took him for a ride to the beach. And that he came back and laid down on the couch and he went to sleep. Both Linda and Mary Beth stated that the next morning, which was March 6th, that they woke up somewhere around 6 o'clock a.m. and he was deceased. He wasn't breathing. They said that they began CPR and they called 911. Pinellas County Sheriff's deputies and EMS responded, and paramedics pronounced Anthony deceased at the scene. There were no signs of foul play, no signs of criminal activity. Nothing didn't indicate anything other than Anthony's death was of natural causes given his advanced age and his medical condition of having dementia and having cancer. The death was classified as natural and the case was closed. On February 13th of 2019, so a few weeks ago, we received a call from a male subject who stated that he had become friends with Mary Beth, and he had met her approximately August, September of 2018, and he met her at a bar here in Pinellas County. They developed a sexual relationship, and Mary Beth subsequently introduced her sister, Linda, to this same male subject. Linda is married, but the male subject and Linda Roberts began a sexual relationship as well. The male stated that he had noticed some, as he described it, as, quote, odd behavior by Linda, and that it was obvious to him that something was troubling her. On February 12th, Linda asked this male to come to her home, and when he got there, she told him that she, meaning Linda, and Mary Beth had killed their father, and explained to him that they had euthanized their father. Because of Linda's statements, the male subject took out his cell phone and began to videotape and audio tape Linda's statements to him. Linda gave very specific details about how she and Mary Beth killed their father. The next day, which was the 13th of February, the male contacted the sheriff's office and spoke with homicide detectives and conveyed what Linda had told him the previous day and provided us with a copy of the video and the audio tape. Detectives began an investigation and with the male's cooperation over the last few weeks, obtained additional recorded statements from Linda and Mary Beth regarding their killing of their father. Both stated, in essence, that they had killed their father and that they had, quote, euthanized him because he had been ill. They said that he didn't want to go to an ALF or an assisted living facility, and that they knew that he would die sometime in the next couple of months, so they decided to euthanize him. The facts as they conveyed it to this male subject who was cooperating with us, and again, this is all on tape, is that on the evening of March 5th, 2015, they decided to give their father a drink of alcohol and an excessive amount of sleeping pills with the hope that it would kill him. However, Mary Beth put too much alcohol in the mixture. It diluted it so that the sleeping pills were not effective, and that their plan to kill him by giving him the sleeping pills and the alcohol didn't work. Their father was laying on a couch in the residence. He had labored breathing after they gave him this concoction of sleeping pills and alcohol. He was moving around, and it appeared to them that he was not going to die from what they gave him. So Linda tried to suffocate him by placing a pillow over his face. And when that didn't work, Linda took a rag and stuffed the rag down his throat. And Mary Beth then pinched his nose and closed and held his arms until he stopped breathing and died. So they gave him the sleeping pills with the alcohol, hoping that was their plan to kill him that way. When that didn't work, they tried to suffocate him with a pillow. That didn't work. So they stuck a rag down his throat and pinched his nose and held his arms until he stopped breathing. Mary Beth's daughter, Lauren, was in the home on the night of March 5th. She's an adult. And Mary Beth stated that she gave her adult daughter, Lauren, sleeping pills to knock her out so that she would not be awake to see them kill her grandfather. Both women said that the killing was, in their words, quote, premeditated, and that they decided to, again, euthanize him because he wouldn't go to the ALF. Linda and Mary Beth stated that they faked finding their father suddenly dead the next morning after killing him and leaving him on the couch all night. And it was all staged when they began CPR and called EMS to respond. Mary Beth further described how it was, in her words, quote, weird after she killed her father because Anthony still had a pulse due to having a pacemaker despite being dead. Last week, in a meeting with the male who was cooperating with us, Linda told that male that her husband had recently been arrested for domestic violence, that their assets had recently been put in her name, and that she wanted her husband dead too. After their father's death, Mary Beth and Linda sold his home and split $120,000 in profit with their brother. The brother had nothing to do with the murder. Both of them were arrested today on first-degree murder charges. Both of them were interviewed by detectives, and they both admitted what I just told you. So I think that's why I'll just stop with that one, and then we'll talk about the other one. Does anybody have any questions on that one you want to ask?
I mean, they could have gotten away with this.
Oh, yeah. You know, if they didn't run their mouth and confess to this guy who she met in the bar last August or September, yeah, you know, I mean, this is, you know, in some respects, you know, as we sometimes call these things, you know, it's the perfect murder because there was absolutely no sign of struggle, no sign of foul play. He had cancer, he had dementia, he was seriously ill. You know, they stuck the rag down his throat, held his nose, and he suffocated. I mean, that's a terrible way to go. And, but yes, they could have easily gotten away with it unless she, for whatever reason, and it was gnawing at her, and that's why she had been, quote, acting weird. And for whatever reason, she decided to tell this guy who she was having this casual sexual relationship with, who she met in a bar, and confessed, and it all unraveled for them from there.
Your experience in law enforcement, I mean, how rare is it for something like this to come around so many years later? You think a case is closed?
Well, you know, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, certainly, but there are cases that we have that are cold cases, if you will. But this wasn't even a cold case because, you know, normally in cold cases is that we know that it's a murder, and it's just that either we know who did it and we can't prove it, or we don't know who did it. But in this case, I mean, it had all the appearances and all the signs of a natural death. And for it to come back around and not be a natural death and to be a murder in a situation like this, this is rare. This doesn't happen very often. I mean, this is really, I'd say, an unusual occurrence. But if they hadn't confessed and hadn't told this guy about it, and then him doing the right thing by coming forward, you know, not everybody's going to come forward in those circumstances either. Thank goodness that he knew what the right thing to do was, and he came forward. So. Anybody got anything else on that one?
Would the substances like sleeping pills or alcohol have been noticed in his system and would have raised any red flags as to?
No, because in a situation like that where you have a guy who's 85 years old and he has cancer, he has dementia, he obviously has heart problems, he has a pacemaker, is that when we go out and we conduct those investigations, and we get every single day, we respond to natural death calls. And if there's no evidence of foul play, no suspected criminal activity, no reason to believe anything other than a natural death, none of that is checked. And a doctor would, a treating physician normally would sign the death certificate. The medical examiner's office wouldn't even respond. They don't even get involved. We notify them. But that's about it. And so there's no examination of the body, there's no test, there's no autopsy. So, it really is, and getting back to, her question, it becomes something that you can get away with, and it becomes that, quote, perfect crime, because it was set up in such a way that it looked like a natural death, and all the background was there for a natural death. So, but of course, if somebody had seen something and it had gone to the medical examiner's office and there had been an autopsy and there had been toxicology, et cetera, then perhaps they would have seen something in the system that raised some flags. But, those are all those crystal ball, what ifs. And in this scenario, in this situation, it's never going to happen because there's no reason to do that.
They were remorseful to your detectives that they killed their own father?
Well, they were cooperative, yeah. I mean, they were, one of them in particular, Mary Beth, was very forthcoming and kind of spilled her guts. But, they probably already, knew at this point. They knew what we knew. I mean, we already have it on tape before they were even interviewed because they've been talking to this guy, over the last few weeks. So, and willingly talking to him. So, yeah, they both talked. So.
On the recordings, did they talk about the financial gain?
No, that wasn't it at all. It was, really, just about the fact that he wouldn't go to the ALF. They knew he was going to die. They actually used the word, premeditated. I mean, I've heard the tape. I mean, they actually used the word premeditated. No, this was premeditated. And they used the word euthanized several times. So, I mean, they clearly knew what they were doing, clearly intent on it. They had a plan. They talked about that this was premeditated. They had a plan, and that they, went through the deal with the sleeping pills and the alcohol, and Mary Beth messed that up, and then they tried the pillow and it didn't work, and they staged it. I mean, to the point where Mary Beth, think about that, is that she has an adult daughter, and she knows that they're going to kill her father and the adult daughter's grandfather. So they're going to knock her out by giving her sleeping pills. And then they put him on the couch and they staged the whole thing and, stuck the rag down his face and then pinch his nose, hold his arm so he stops breathing. And then they do the, oh my God, is they still got a pulse. But then they realize, well, the pulse is coming from the pacemaker, and they leave him there on the couch all night. And then the next morning they get up at 6 o'clock and they stage this whole thing. Okay, let's start doing CPR and call 911. And then the paramedics come and, oh my God, he's 85 years old. And, so he sat there dead all night, and they went to sleep knowing he's dead, knowing that they're going to stage it in the morning to have EMS come and go through this whole charade. So, think about that. I mean, there's a lot of planning that went into that, a lot of thought that went into that. No, it's kind of, it's terrible that they put that much effort and thought into killing their dad.
Sounds like a Dateline episode.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And thankfully they're not getting away with it.